In a land where time was not measured by clocks, but by the rhythm of the heart, there lived a man named Aram, a merchant of unimaginable wealth and influence. In this strange and ancient realm, every heartbeat counted. The young were watched not by the passing of hours, but by the fluttering pace of their chests. At birth, a child's heart would race like birds in spring, rapid and full of promise. But as the years passed, the beat would slow, gradually, inevitably. And when one's final day came, the rhythm would falter, hesitate, then silence. The people of this land had no need for watches. They placed their fingers on their wrists or chests and counted the moments of their lives, measured not in hours, but in the distance between heartbeats. Aram had grown up in a modest village at the edge of the great trade routes, where spices floated in the air and the markets were alive with color and sound. From a young age, he possessed a gift, the ability to see patterns in chaos, to find profit where others saw risk. He built his empire brick by brick, caravan by caravan, until his name echoed across cities like a golden promise. He married young, a woman named Alina, whose laughter once outpaced even the fastest heartbeat. Together they had 3 children, Marek, strong and bold, Layla, quiet and observant, and little Joran, who still ran through their halls with wild abandon and a heart that beat like a festival drum. To his family, Aram was a pillar, distant perhaps, but dependable. To the people, he was both revered and feared. They called him the man of the measured pulse, for his heartbeat never seemed to change, no matter the storm or triumph. Some said it was discipline, others that he had traded something long ago to maintain such control. But inside, Aram lived with a quiet terror. Each time his hand rested over his chest and he felt the slightest shift, a twinge of irregularity, the chill of death crept into his mind. He began to avoid his own reflection. He refused to speak of age. He walked through his palatial halls like a ghost seeking his own end. And then came the day. Aram had visited an old healer in the mountain cities, ostensibly to trade medicinal roots. But word reached his ears, whispered through cloaked lips, of a sage who dwelled beyond the salt cliffs. A man older than memory, whose heart no longer beat, yet who still breathed. A man who could sell time. The idea gripped Aram like fire. What if, for the right price, he could purchase more heartbeats? Not from a doctor, not from herbs, but from something deeper. On the evening of his departure, Alina stood by the gates of their estate, her eyes veiled in sadness. "You have everything, Aram. Why must you chase what no man can hold?" Aram touched her face, but his eyes looked past her. "Because everything means nothing, if I cannot hold it forever." That night, as the stars blinked over the desert and the wind whistled through the sands, Aram rode alone into the unknown. Aram's journey led him beyond the mapped world, past dunes that whispered, past valleys where the stars never shifted, and finally to the edge of a salt cliff where the wind stopped blowing. There, carved into the face of a dead mountain, stood a narrow door with no handle, no inscription, only a symbol above it, a heart split in two with an eye in the center. When Aram pressed his hand to the symbol, the stone grew warm. The pulse beneath his fingers slowed. Then the door opened. Inside, time stood still. The room was circular, filled with softly glowing sand that drifted upward rather than down. In the center, a figure waited, not hunched with age, not cloaked in shadow, but still and timeless. The sage wore robes that shimmered between night and dawn, and his face was unreadable, like a memory half remembered. "You've come to buy time," the sage said, his voice calm as still water. Aram nodded, trying to appear brave, but not for the joy of living, only the fear of ending. Aram's mouth tightened. "Name your price." The sage extended a pale hand, not for gold, but for Aram's own. He placed it over the merchant's chest. In that moment, Aram felt as though his soul were being counted, weighed, every decision, every cruelty, every kindness overlooked. His heart skipped once. Then the sage offered him a small glass vial, sealed and pulsing with a faint red light. Inside were heartbeats, extra life, bought not with money, but with something far rarer. "The cost," the sage whispered, "is memory." Aram blinked. "Memory? For every heartbeat you gain, you must trade one memory tied to someone you love. A moment, a laugh, a glance. Gone, forever. You will live longer, but those pieces of your soul will vanish." Aram hesitated, hand trembling. But then he remembered the cold grip of fear he felt each night as he placed a hand over his heart. He took the vial. From that day on, Aram's heartbeat grew stronger. His skin flushed with youthful color. People in the marketplace whispered that he looked younger each week. They said his posture had straightened, his energy returned, but something else had changed. At dinner one night, his daughter Layla told a story about a time he had carried her on his shoulders during a storm. Aram smiled politely, but didn't remember it. Later, Alina found him staring at a portrait in the hall of their wedding day. "Do you recall what you whispered to me here?" she asked. He shook his head. The longer Aram lived, the less of himself remained. His children became strangers. His wife's eyes searched his for someone she once knew. His home grew larger and emptier all at once. And worst of all, he stopped noticing. The fear had vanished. But so had everything that made life worth fearing the end of. Until one night, he sat alone beneath the moonlight, and he could not recall his mother's face. And it broke him. He returned to the place of the sage, but the door would no longer open. Aram waited for hours beside the sealed door, whispering names he no longer remembered the meaning of: Layla, Daniel, Alina. But the stone remained cold, unmoved by regret, so he stayed. He waited through the rising sun and its fall until the wind returned and the stars above began to shift once more. Just when he had begun to believe the sage was only a phantom of memory, the door opened with a quiet groan, and the light inside pulsed like a sleeping heart. Aram stepped in. This time, the room was different. The floating sand was gone. The sage was older now, somehow. His robes had dulled. He looked at Aram not with judgment, but with deep sorrow. "You've returned," the sage said. "I want to give it back," Aram whispered, voice hollow. "All of it." "You cannot return time," the sage replied, "but you may still give it away." Aram stepped forward, his hands shaking. "Then take it from me. Let someone else use what I've wasted. Someone who still remembers why it matters." The sage studied him in silence, then extended his hand, not to take, but to guide. They walked through a second door, into a chamber Aram had never seen before. There, hanging in the air like suspended lanterns, floated hundreds, maybe thousands, of glowing heartbeats, each sealed in its own glass vial. Some dimmed, some glowed bright, all waiting. The sage lifted one. "This is what you gave, and now it will be given again." "To who?" Aram asked. "To a child born too soon, to a mother on the edge of breath, to a poet who has yet to write the words the world needs. Your time can still mean something, if you choose to let go." Tears rolled down Aram's face, not out of grief, but relief. He nodded. As he exhaled, his body lightened, his hands shimmered, his heart slowed, not in fear this time, but in peace. And when his final breath came, the sage whispered, he remembered. Outside, across the world, a newborn child gasped her first breath, stronger than expected. A candle in a storm did not flicker. A song once silenced found its voice in the hands of a street musician. Aram was gone, but in countless moments scattered across the world, he lived.